Hi, and welcome to the Pride Road Architects podcast. I'm Lisa Rains, and each episode I'll talk to people who interest me in the world of architecture and business. So join me and fellow lions and lionesses as we explore architecture in the den.
This meeting is being recorded.
So hi everyone, and welcome to Architecture in the Den with me, your host Lisa Rains from Pride Road Architects. And today I'm delighted that Andrew Jarman is joining us. Would you like to say hello and just introduce yourself?
Hi Lisa, thank you for having me. I'm Andrew Jarman. I'm an architect at Ellis Williams Architects in Warrington, and I am an ambassador for the Architects Benevolent Society as well.
Fantastic. So, well, thanks for coming on. We, as I said, this is just a gentle conversation. So we met when you organised an event over at Liverpool, John Moore's.
So it was a Wellbeing symposium. So I organised it in sort of collaboration with the Liverpool Architecture Foundation and Liverpool Architectural Society, and so we had members of we had the sort of deputy head and the head of the architecture schools of Liverpool, yourself, local architect Sarah Harrison, and Melissa Kirkpatrick, who's another ABS ambassador, who wrote her dissertation on wellbeing. So it was, I suppose I wanted to do it because it's an area that I'm quite passionate about, and just wanted to really have a conversation about sort of the reasons why or how architecture has an impact on how we feel and well-being, and rather than sort of talk about, there's a lot of talk about doing yoga and all those exercise and all those sorts of things about sort of combating if you're feeling low or whatever, but I sort of wanted to have a conversation about, well, what are the things specific to architecture that contribute to poor well-being, the way that fees are structured, the way projects are run, the way that people operate companies, all that sort of stuff. So I think it was a really interesting conversation, I thought.
Oh, well, you drew a massive audience. It was quite intimidating.
Yeah, it was good. I think that probably says a lot about I guess in the last few years, well-being's just become a much more talked about thing, I think, and people are, particularly I think younger people especially are more engaged with it and want to talk about it more.
So how did you get involved in the Architecture Benevolent Society?
I originally sort of found out about them a long time ago when I was a part two, and then after I qualified, I was having quite a difficult time personally, and the job was definitely contributing to that. And I think I sort of had a bit of a mental health crisis 2019 in the summer, and I knew I needed some form of help. And I spoke to my GP first, and they sort of said that it would be sort of like 6 weeks before I could get a phone call with someone, and then it would likely be another 6-7 months before I'd get to potentially speak to a psychotherapist, on a sort of regular basis. So I got in touch with the ABS because I knew that they provided help for people. They provide it for architects, anyone who works in architectural practice now. But yeah, I knew that they could help, so I got in touch with them, and within about 2 weeks of my first phone call, I had my first counselling session of CBT, which is cognitive behavioural therapy, So it was within 2 weeks of getting in touch with them. They have a partnership with a charity called Anxiety UK. So Anxiety UK, basically I sort of had a series of counselling with Anxiety UK, but the ABS basically paid for it. So that was how that worked. And then that had a really big impact on my life. It was a really positive experience. So, and I sort of started talking more about well-being, and I'd done a couple of sort of talks in my office about my experience. And I sort of wanted to start giving back. So I became an ambassador for the ABS. So yeah, I'm just sort of trying to do more, get the word about what the ABS can do, and just more about mental health in general.
So if you're an architect and you wanted some support, you can, what is it, a website that you can go to?
Yeah, they've got a website. If you just Google Architects Benevolent Society, it's I think it's like abs.org or something, but they've got a website, so you can submit an email if you need help, or there's a phone line on there as well. So yeah, you just get in touch with them, and then they'll direct you appropriately. Basically, they've got counsellors in-house, I think, who you can speak to. But they support people in a really wide range of ways. So they do health. They can help people with health issues. They can help with employment issues. They can help with financial issues. That all sorts of stuff. Mental health is just a particular thing that I benefited from.
And is it based in London, or?
Yes, yeah, they are based in London. There's ambassadors all over the country now. But my counselling specifically was that was all done remotely. So you can get help from the ABS from anywhere, basically.
And what sort of support did you have from your employers whilst you were going through it?
I spoke to them. I sort of, it was on holiday that I actually sort of had like a bit of a crisis. When I came back, I called them. I think I can't remember the order, but basically I was off sick for 4 weeks with depression. So I basically called my employer and said, look, there's all this stuff going on. Yeah, I've got this sick note 4 weeks, sent that off to them, I think. And then actually I had a new sort of towards the end of that 4 week period. Part of the reason I was struggling was feeling quite isolated socially where I was in York. And I basically knew that I didn't really want to stay there. So sort of towards the end of that period, one of my friends said, look, we're hiring, send your CV in. And that was in Liverpool. And obviously you're sort of supposed to declare, or you're supposed to be upfront if you go back to work or whatever. So I called them while I was off sick on the last few days and said, look, I'll plan to come back to work in the next few days, but I'd like to go and take this interview because I just need the change. And they were like, yeah, that's fine, we understand, we sort of didn't expect you to come back. So they were really understanding about it, which made it a lot easier than it perhaps could have been if it was a employee who wasn't that sympathetic to it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. It's kind of important to get those messages out there.
Yeah, I think so. And I think part of the reason why I sort of started doing more in this area was because all the conversations I've had about mental health with people, whenever I've been quite sort of frank about these sort of things, the feedback and the conversations that I've had have been really good. A lot of people have been really sort of honest with me in reply, and I think that just comes from sometimes people just don't know that it's, or if you've already taken that leap to say, look, I struggle with this and that, then they feel like they can open up and have that conversation because they know it's not going to be a judgmental thing. And I think actually as well, I was in the interview I had, I said to them that I was currently on sick leave, but my employer knew I was there, and had a really honest conversation with the hiring person there, who said, yeah, my brother's, he had family experiences of that. So that was really, to start off somewhere where they'd already understood that was it was a really good experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is there anything that employers can do to help, or
I can't think of anything specifically. I think just I think people just need to sort of open the dialogue up really, and make sure that people know it's okay to, to be having, mental health is such a, everyone's got it, and everyone knows someone who's, struggled or what have you. There are companies out there that sort of specialize in sort of like wellbeing consultancies. It's not something I've looked into in too much detail, but there are wellbeing consultancies there who draw up wellbeing sort of strategies for businesses. I don't know if many architectural practices have that. I think possibly just due to scale. But yeah, I was quite interested when, part of the reason sort of asked you to be involved was you obviously sort of, you set up Pride Road. I think you said that wasn't particularly by choice, and I just thought it was interesting with your franchising experience. I wondered what your sort of experiences were of architecture and wellbeing in general.
Yeah, well, I set up sort of Pride Road. Well, no, I set up on my own 12 years ago because I'd been made redundant twice whilst on maternity leave. So, I've got 3 kids. So first time, first time I was made redundant, I was on mat leave, so baby was 4 months old, and I got written a letter to say that the office was closing down, goodbye. And it was like,
right,
okay.
I mean, that's terrible, isn't it, really?
Yeah, so I just had to kind of pick myself up and just crack on and get straight out there. People were saying, oh, you should have taken them to tribunal and all that sort of stuff, and I was like, at the time, I didn't want to dwell on it. I just wanted to move forward and get back into the workplace. And so we kind of sent my CV out and got interviews, and I was back in employment sort of a couple of months later. Then when I had my second child, it was the boom. So the economy was very buoyant. It was like, how old is she? 2005. Oh my God, she's 18 soon. Yeah, so architecture was buoyant 18 years ago. And my company was really supportive. And gave me sort of a slightly better maternity package. So I took 6 months out and then went back in. And then in 2010 we had the crash. Well, it was after the crash, and I sort of decided to take well, to have child number 3, and then took a year out, and it was just on statutory maternity, which is atrocious, absolutely atrocious. You know, you can't, you know, statutory maternity is like £100 a week. So, you know, we just had to self-fund it.
Right.
And then when I went back, they were just having to let go of people, and they basically de-skilled me, or felt like I was de-skilled because I'd been out for so long and I'd lost my confidence. In fact, I think I tried, the RIBA was running a return to work course in London at the time, and it was heavily subsidised. And I remember asking for some support to go, and they let me go, but I don't think they gave me financial support to go, but they gave me the time off to go. And that was really good at kind of just boosting your confidence back up. But then after I'd been back in practice, they kind of closed my position, which was not great.
No, I can imagine.
Yeah, so 3 kids, breadwinner, and then, you know, back out in the marketplace at the time when like 50% of all architects lost their jobs.
Tough times.
Yeah, so I ended up kind of doing all the interview rounds, but there were no jobs. So I kind of had to set up on my own out of necessity.
Yeah.
Rather than choice. But I mean, that was good for me because I had, you know, I mean, I'm the eldest child of 3. My brother's got learning difficulties.
Okay.
So I've kind of always had to step up.
Yeah.
So I guess I was I was parenting from a very young age.
Right. Used to it. You've got that resilience.
Yeah, so I kind of got that. I got that resilience. And you know, for me, it was like just get out there and, you know, made loads of mistakes, but just kept on striding through. And you know, and made it work. You know, every time I made a mistake, I kind of found solutions. And then eventually I got confident in being able to find solutions, and you know, it's you know, with that resilience. At the time I did, so I'd gone out on my own, and there was some what's it, European directive funding for business development in Blackburn, and I kind of just managed to get it, and we ended up group mentoring, and there was an incredible business coach called Imelda O'Keefe, and she facilitated these meetings, and then just one day she just kind of looked at me and went, "Are you okay?" And you're like, and it just went,
Yeah. I think it's interesting the point you sort of say about resiliency and confidence. I think that's huge for especially younger members of a team who, you know, might just I think I certainly as a sort of, when I was at part 2 and stuff, I think you're so grateful to have a job that you perhaps don't see it as a two-way
Mm,
thing, and you don't realize that, whoever you're working for is, um, I don't know what the metrics are like for part ones, but in terms of how much profit they make off you, but once you've been in practice for a while, the company's probably is making money off you, and it's a reciprocal relationship. And I think I found it hard quite early on to be, um, I suppose, just to know what my own worth was to a practice.
mm,
And I think that's really, really important to, to know that actually, yeah, it is a two-way street. And, yeah, you get a job and you get an experience, and, they teach you and all that sort of stuff, but you're a resource for them also.
mm,
You making them fees, hopefully, if doing your job reasonably well. And yeah, it goes both ways for sure.
mm. I mean, Imelda always talks about the competence curve. It's you start off, by being what is it? You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
And so, I mean, I look at my kids and I can see it because, like teenagers, they're just, powerful because, they don't know what they don't know. And
yeah.
yeah, those, kids coming in going, yeah, I want to be an architect. I'm going to be an architect. I'm good at maths. I can do this. Yeah,
Mm,
this is, and they kind of battle through it. And then as you start going through architecture education, you start to realize how vast the field is. And so you kind of start into that you then start to know what you don't know.
yeah, yeah. I always think the more you know, the less the more you know, the less you know, or the more you
Mm.
realize that you actually less. There's more and more stuff that you don't know anything about.
And it is so scary
Mm,
until you finally bridge that kind of, it's okay not to know everything.
mm.
But the scary thing is when you pretend to know everything.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting architecture. Like you mentioned mistakes earlier, you have to make a lot of them, and I think I listened to like a couple of podcasts where I remember hearing about uncertainty makes us uncomfortable in general a lot of the time, and I think as an architect you are uncertain about a lot of things
Mm.
like all the time. But I guess that what comes with experience is knowing what level of uncertainty is okay at what stage. Is
Mm.
knowing what level of information is okay for now, and then we need to know that, and then after that we need to know that. And that's a really hard thing to get your head around. And it, even for
Yeah,
me, still, I'm relatively young, but project architect on 10-20 million pound buildings is still really hard to sort of to accept that uncertainty sometimes.
mm, mm. Um, yeah, especially kind of you start off wanting to kind of go zoom straight into detail, and it's about just trying to keep that review perspective or helicopter view and just kind of
Mm,
constantly look down and kind of see what you're doing and make sure it's going in the right direction. And it's one of the reasons why I set up the franchise, because I kind of realized that I'd kind of built this path and made loads of mistakes, sort of not just in architecture but in the structure of the business and how I ran the
mm,
business, how I dealt with clients, things that I said, things that I didn't say. And I realized that there was such a massive gap with, people kind of wanting to step out on their own, but being not having the confidence to do it.
Yeah.
So the franchise provides that kind of umbrella structure and support, you know, so we can share experience. We take people through the steps. We kind of we share our experience, and then we're constantly learning as well from each other. Which is brilliant, you know, because we change. You know, legislation always changes. The climate's always changing. You know, materials change, and so, you know, we're constantly learning, constantly evolving, and we do that with the system, within the system. But, you know, we're still really quite structured. I love structure, and it really does help. Yeah, so that's what we are here for. I remember when I set it up, it was about ABC. It was like architectural support, business support, and then confidence and coaching.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
A lot of what we do is about that confidence and coaching. So not only is it talking to me, but we have kind of Imelda's still involved. She talks to my friends on a regular basis and provides coaching through, which is brilliant, because it's about kind of mindset.
Yeah, I must admit, I don't think I'd ever go it alone. I don't think I'm not convinced that's really for me. I think if I was going to start my own business at some point, it'd probably be with a colleague, so that I was at least, you know, you've got someone that you can bounce ideas off. Because I think architecture, on, you know, whether it's, you know, you're practicing on your own or just on a project on your own, and you're not, you know, it needs people to bounce off ideas. And, you know, one method of thinking is only, you know, you can apply this to a building or all sorts of different things. Like, one method of thinking or one person's thinking is going to be a little bit cyclical. Whereas two people are obviously going to think differently. They'll have different thoughts about certain things, and that's usually going to be a good thing.
I kind of always often looked around at people who were in partnerships and was quite jealous of them. You know, just to have someone to bounce off. But for me, I never quite found the right person to do that with. So
yeah,
I've foraged ahead with the franchise structure, and now I've created a team that we work with constantly, which is lovely.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the other thing, isn't it? Like, human relationships make a massive difference to, you know, work ones. Sort of one of my best friends, who's the one who mentioned that the Liverpool practice I was at previously was hiring when I was off sick. We worked together at university, and I think we've always got on really well personally. But when we were working together, we were always just really honest with each other and just trusted each other and respected each other. And that just made a big, you know, whenever we were sort of struggling with a technical problem or maybe it was a contractual thing, we'd always go and ask each other, what do you think of this? And, you know, just being able to be completely honest with someone and know, you know, and trusting them and having that sort of mutual trust, respect, all of those sorts of things made for a really good sort of team. I think that's really important.
I mean, I remember back at architecture school, you know, you were very much siloed, and it was very isolating. You were work, you know, it was like, you know, you kind of kept your work to yourself and you didn't share until the crit, and then you had to put it on a wall, and it was horrific. So it got
and you never really, I mean, I guess as a solo practitioner, there's perhaps a bit of that, but, you know, most architecture, you know, you don't work in a silo like that. You know, you've got a brief, you've got a client, you've got a contractor, you've got all these different people who've got all these inputs, and it's not about you wanting this. It's about, you know, meeting a brief and meeting a time frame and, you know, meeting all these criteria. It's not just, oh, well, I really wanted this big fancy swirly building. And you know, it sort of used to frustrate me at uni when people would sort of say, well, I want it to be this and this, and I don't know, just always, it's not, it's you don't work in a silo, so.
I think that's I mean, it certainly seems sort of more teamwork happening at university nowadays. My stepson's at Manchester doing architecture, and he's constantly talking about teamwork, so hopefully things have changed, but who knows. Right, and all of a sudden time is drawing to an end.
That went quickly.
I know. I mean, if we think about sort of listeners to this podcast, it could be they could be architects, they could be architectural students, they could be architects thinking about going alone. I think there's quite a lot in here about the support that there is out there, especially from the ABS. And just reach out.
I would just urge anyone who does need help with whatever it be, just get in touch with the ABS, and they can help guide you to sort of the right guidance. Different organisations they work with, like Shelter or Anxiety UK, and debt charities, all that sort of thing. They really helpful for anyone who's listening who might need some help.
So, and we'll put the links in the description. So
great. Okay. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew, for coming on.
Well, yeah, thank you for having me, Lisa.
Okay.
No pleasure.
If anyone's listening, please get in touch if you would want to carry on talking about this sort of topic, or want to come on the show and talk about your experience in architecture. So goodbye, Andrew.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining me, Lisa Rains, for Architecture in the Den. If you want to find out about franchising, check out our website, prideraidfranchise.co.uk. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe and leave a review. And do get in touch through your favourite platform if you'd like to be a guest.